Hey, today we're talking about baking cause and effect. Get your worksheets ready and let's go.
Okay, I got this.
When I don't read the directions on my recipe,
Ingredients are left out, the leavening is lost while the batter sits around, or you might need to redo the whole thing if you left something out. If you tap your flour on the counter,
it packs the flour and makes the product too dry and heavy. And if you measure flour in a liquid measuring cup,
it gives you an inaccurate flour amount and your product can be too dry or heavy. How about this? If you use butter or margarine, not a spread when the butter is bendable or soft, what do you get?
You get a smooth creamy mixture of sugars and butters.
Why does food stick to a pan?
Because you forgot to grease it or use parchment paper. How about this? What can happen if you break an egg into your mixing bowl?
You could get eggshell in your product. Ugh. Let's talk measuring.
What happens if you measure 1/2 cup liquid in a dry 1/2 cup?
I know. You could have up to a tablespoon more or less of what you're measuring. And if you measure dry ingredients with the wrong technique or you didn't preheat or oven,
the baked product is dry and hard to chew. Let's go sit down and have a cup of java. We've got more to cover.
Ready to go again? Let's do this. So say you use the 1/3 and the 1/4 cup to try to get 2/3 cup of sugar. What would happen?
You will have 1 tablespoon and 1 teaspoon too little sugar. You would get less caramelization, your flavor would be less sweet, and you'd have less volume. How about this? You use a stick of butter instead of a cup?
You'd be using half the amount of butter, you would need 2 sticks. The creaming wouldn't turn out right and your yield would be low. It wouldn't taste good either. What happens if you only use 2 1/4 teaspoons to make 3/4 teaspoon?
Well, you'd be short 1/4 teaspoon. That could affect volume, fermentation, and flavor. Ugh, you need to measure correctly. Which what happens if you heat flour instead of level it?
That's easy. Your product will be too dry and heavy. How about this? You accidentally set the oven for 450 instead of the called for 350?
For real? You're going to burn that cake. But, what if you measure everything correctly? You spoon the flour into a dry measuring cup and you level it off.
Well, then you can expect consistent quality results. Would you care for some cake?
Nah, I'm good. Let's get this worksheet finished. What would happen if you forget to set your timer?
Well, you could burn those amazing cookies or your cake just wouldn't ever get down. What about if your butter is too soft or you melt it before you cream it?
LOL, easy. Your cookies will spread out and the edges will run together. How about if you use spread instead of butter or margarine?
I did that once. Those cookies tasted okay, but they were ugly. I got one. What makes a recipe quick to prepare and the results are consistent and great?
Ah, that means mise en place was used. All ingredients and equipment were organized before beginning. Oh, here's a big one. What happens if you put the bowl and the flour both on the scale together and you weigh the entire amount?
Well, you have to start over, because you should have zeroed out the bowl before you weighed the ingredients. And here's another biggie. What happens if you scooped larges and small cookies on the same sheet pan and baked them?
You would have an inconsistent product. Some would be over or undercooked. It's important to have the same size. And here is our last cause and effect. What happens if the oven racks are positioned too high or too low in the oven, or you forgot to preheat?
Your product will be pale on top and burnt on the bottom. This has been great, Scott. I'm glad we got together to answer these.
Now when we get into the kitchen we will be rock stars.